Now, one of the questions that I've been puzzling over for some time now is whether or not we're releasing too many people into our community who have committed crimes, and whether or not those people, because they are asylum seekers primarily, should they just be locked up forever? So if they've already served their term, then we should, according to some in the media, we should maintain them incarcerated forever. That we should never ever release them again simply because at one point they were asylum seekers. Of course, the other issue is that some of them have been convicted for murder, some for rape, and some for pedophilia. Now, I'm not here to judge whether or not those people should or should not be released into the community. What I am going to talk about, though, is the way this issue has been so politicised by certain members of the community, particularly the media, that it is a bit disturbing that we wind up with a distorted view of events. And I'll play a bit about my favourite media commentator, Peter Credlin, in just a moment, so she can give you her take on this. And I'd be interested to know what you think are the issues and whether or not these people should be released. I just want to make one particular point here, and that is that whenever a person has concluded their sentence, they are released into the community. They have served their time. This is the way our system works. We may not necessarily like it a lot of the time. I believe pedophiles in particular should be kept in jail for much longer so that they don't revisit those issues. But nevertheless, that's our law. So whatever the law says, we should do what we can to abide by it. Now, the law in relation to these asylum seekers being released was a law which was manifestly applied by the High Court. And in this particular case, she's right when she says it was about one particular asylum seeker that the court suggested should be released. But I would also suggest that there was some conversations had with Home Affairs Department and Immigration and a whole lot of other departments. Their legal experts would have got together and said there's a whole group of people who still fit under that category. And so if each one of them had their cases taken to the High Court, they too would find themselves released. So it was similar cases, all in relation to this first one that the High Court ruled on, and the department chose to release those people because it was probably more expedient to do that than to have all those cases appear before the High Court and the department were like a group of dicks. So that's what they did. But Credlin and others aren't happy with this. Now, I just want to raise one point before we listen to Credlin, one other point I should say, and that is that if the Liberal Party was still in power and this case went to the High Court, which was on the cards anyway, because my guess was that the case was taken to the High Court prior to the Libs losing the election, they would have still found themselves in exactly the same position as do the Labor Party right now. Now, whether the Labor Party would have hit them in the same way that the Liberals have, we don't know. Probably, who knows, it's just politics. But at the end of the day, the situation would have been the same. The people would have had to have been released, and there would have been a stir about all of this because of the types of cases that that are evident, and also those people being released back into the community. And I understand the concern, so I'm not having a go at it for that. I'm having a go, or I'm not even having a go, I'm wondering about whether we are told the exact circumstances under which these releases have occurred. And I don't think we have. In fact, I don't think many people actually know what conversations were had with the department and the ministers concerned in relation to any of this. However, it is evident that they're having a go at the Minister for Immigration because they want to make an issue of this because the tax cut issue is dead in the water, so they've got to find something else. So this is in my view, what they have endeavoured to do. So here's Credlin. I'll play a little bit of what she says. Don't disagree with everything that she said. I disagree with the underlying tone and the reason why this has been presented as a major issue at this particular point in time.
But first, after all the argy-bargy this week about 149 foreign criminals 7 murderers, of course, 37 sex offenders, 72 violent offenders, that government ineptitude put them out into the community. 3 things now are clear. First, that the government was warned about this problem last June, August, September and October, ahead of a High Court decision that ordered the release of just one man, the child rapist known only as NZYQ, panicked and released all 149 foreign criminals into our community. Now, the second thing that's clear is that any attempt by Labor, and they were at it again today, to try and blame this on the opposition, that somehow tough guy Peter Dutton was in fact too soft on illegal boat arrivals and that this was all his fault, well, that just won't wash. But the third and most worrying thing is that we, the Australian taxpayer, will be left stuck with just about all of these serious criminals who will end up spending the rest of their lives here in Australia, living at our expense in government-funded housing and on welfare. Now, this is the end result when governments lose control of our borders, and that was where the last Labor government failed so monumentally. And let's face it, it's also another example of government losing control of the welfare system so that unworthy...
So, interestingly enough, we've gone from people being released because the High Court says that they should be, to immigration and the fact that we're clearly having too many immigrants in this country, and the inference is that most of those immigrants are dishonest, and then it'll pivot to housing, and then so there's a thread that runs through most of what Credlin has to say now, and that particularly the defence of Peter Dutton, because there was an inquiry recently which indicated that Peter Dutton was the minister concerned, Minister for Immigration and Home Affairs, when, in fact, some people were offered lots and lots of money to provide services. In fact, one of those organisations that was offered something like $185 million, I think, actually was their residence or their business address was a shed on Kangaroo Island here in South Australia. So, and there was very little due diligence in terms of who these people were, whether they can actually provide the services that they were contracted to provide. So there's lots of issues around Peter Dutton. There's the issues around his au pairs and getting them to enter into the country basically illegally, as it turned out, because they were refused entry, and then he pushed the issue and they were eventually granted entry, even though the department said they shouldn't have entered because they didn't meet certain criteria. So there's all these other issues. So as those issues are mounting around Dutton, we're finding that people like Credlin are pushing back about this and raising this issue again in relation to the number of these people that have been released back into our community. Now, I don't want to actually talk about the Dutton issue anymore because that's a bit tiring, but I think this issue around those people being released into our community needs to be canvassed a little bit more and seen for what it is. The Minister says that those people are being monitored all the time. So there are strict restrictions on that 149, on most of those 149 people that have been released. And I am convinced that all government agencies, particularly state government agencies who are responsible for these people because of the criminality that some of them have enacted or been a party to, then those people will be monitored to the nth degree, and that any actions that they take or any movements that they take that may prove to be nefarious will be adjudicated accordingly. So I'm quite confident that that's what's going to happen. But this issue continually being raised, Credlin's continually wanting to raise it because it steers itself away from the issues that actually are confronting Dutton at this particular point in time. And there've been some interesting statements made in Parliament about the recent report brought out around Dutton, and it's worth watching the Minister's response to some of those. Claire O'Neill, worth watching. So what do you think? Let me know. I'd be most interested to know what you think in the comments section below, and please remember to subscribe to my channel, and keep your comments respectful, if you wouldn't mind. I'd really appreciate that. I know a lot of people think that I'm a dick. I know I am, so please don't bother telling me that anymore. But if you want to have an argument, someone put up an argument the other day which I thought was contrary to my view, but it was an argument and it was beautifully put, and I really appreciated that. I'm happy to have the argument. I just don't want to be called names or told that I'm worthless or useless or I've got so few views or whatever it is that people say in order to try and put you down. It doesn't work with me, so don't bother. Anyway, what do you think of that? People being released in the community? Do you think Credlin's right? Do you have a different view? Thanks everybody for being here. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.